Hi everyone, I am Unnati Jain and I welcome you all to the stories of cultural identity and ideology, food and drinks under TMYS's September Review 2022 project in association with the York Center for Asian Research, York University, Canada. We are seeking submissions in the form of essays, stories, and poems. To know more about the architecture of our presently ongoing projects, please visit our website www.tellmeyourstory.biz. So, the topic of our digital conversation today is intercultural adaptation and adoption of food rituals. And we're extremely honored to have amongst us Professor Kiran Bhushi, Mr. Gautam Mehrishi, and Mr. Michael Swamy this evening. So, before we move on to hear and engage with our speakers, I would like to quickly introduce them. So, Professor Kiran Bhushi obtained her doctoral degree from JNU. Her doctoral research involved a transnational setting that gave a vantage point to look at a range of concerns in contemporary contexts like identity consumption, mediated social phase of Indian diaspora. Food waste is also one of those concerns. Her involvement with many aspects of food, like running a restaurant, cooking and growing organic food, bring on an added perspective of her practice. Her most recent work is an anthology by the name Farm to Fingers Culture and Politics of Food in Contemporary India. This also won a government award in 2019 and in Paris. So, we welcome you, ma'am. Chef Gautam Mehrishi, a well known celebrity chef. Yes. So, Gautam Mehrishi, a well known celebrity chef, is a proponent of Indian food. He established the first chocolatiera chain by the name San Churros in India, an Australian chain having a pan Indian presence. He is the culinary curator of Vortex, the fusion restaurant and bar, and of the first of the restaurant in Bangalore. In his most trending show, Kitchen Magic, he brings professional and innovative global cooking techniques to the home kitchen. 100% Veg, hosted by Chef Mehrishi, brings to viewers bold side of vegetarian cuisine with all the oomph and the visual appeal of the world's famous classic dishes. Welcome you, sir. Chef Michael Swamy is a chef, a food stylist, an educator, food and travel photographer based in Mumbai, and is a pioneer in the area of food media. A graduate of the prestigious Lee Cordon Bleu, London, Chef Michael has authored several best-selling books and is associated with the leading hospitality universities where he teaches and sets up courses on food media. So we welcome you to today's discussion. So, without further ado, I would like to now invite Professor Bhushi to share her insights on the topic. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you so much, and thanks for that generous, kind introduction. I think I feel a little daunted by the fact that we have two sterling chefs in the panel. I am no chef, but I've had a very deep involvement with all things related to food. I mean, starting a restaurant to continuously cooking at different venues and places apart from the restaurant scenario. So I hopefully that will help me in first starting out this discussion. Uh, Let me start by talking a little about identity. Just can you just give me a second? There's a cat which is making a lot of noise. So I'll just
Sure, ma'am. Sure.
give me 1 second.
Sure, ma'am.
Sorry about that. She was
No
just
problem,
yelling.
ma'am. Please continue.
Yeah. So, I had a fairly longish research among Indian diaspora. Let me start that as my entry point. And when I was doing my fieldwork, which was in the US, and I found a very interesting uh, take on Thanksgiving lunch or dinner. The whole Thanksgiving is a big thing for Americans, which basically celebrates the bounty that America has to offer, and it's also a sort of a homage to the Native Americans and some of the plants and things that are very typical of America. So, so that kind of thing. I had gone to a Thanksgiving dinner in a very traditional Tambram family, and I found that basically they had turned the event to celebrate the Tamil Brahmin identity, and and that was just one instance. But in my field work and subsequently even in my travels and wherever, being a sociologist, I'm always interested in how food is so tied up with identities and how people either adapt things from different cultures and remake it to kind of signify a particular event, which of course signifies an identity, or completely turn it around. So there are many possibilities. For instance, in south of India, particularly in Kerala, but even in other parts of South India, you'll find that in during Christmas there is something called a rose cake, which is very very popular. And now it's a way of you know it's a confluence between the very local and the a religion which traveled from another part of the globe. So I think people have a tendency to always signify their identities through food. Having said that, what I would also flag off, and I'll stop here because I want to hear others as well, and then I can come back. So you have at one level a sort of a hybrid element in the way people express identity through food. On the other hand, you resurrect things which have been long forgotten, again as a way to mark your identity, or you completely reinvent, sometimes you even reinvent a certain aspects, certain practices to signify your culture. And offhand I can't think of any such reinventions, but definitely I'll come back to this point later, but I'll pass the platform to my other panelists, and I'll stop here just to, yes.
Thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful insights on the topic of today's discussion. Um, Moving on, I would now like to hand it over to Mr. Mehrishi to present his perspectives on the topic in discussion. Over to you, sir.
Hi, Kiranji, very well said, very well put, and little conversation, but very big meaning in totality. Talking about food rituals, talking about adoption of food rituals, adaptation of food culture, it's such a big subject. It sometimes also tells me the fact that, we Indians, we need to understand first what is a food ritual. Have you ever wondered what actually a food ritual is? I mean, food ritual can be as simple as the compulsive way in which a person interacts with the food. If you're not allowed to interact in a certain way with the food, there is bound to be anxiety. For example, if I am as a ritual in terms of eating biryani, I like to eat biryani with my hand. I want to feel the bite, the rice, the ghee, the flavor, the aroma, and also I understand the science and the ritual of the fact that when I eat with my hand, it only does not feed my hunger. It also feeds my spirit. It feeds my soul. It feeds me completely. If I'm told to eat in a community where everybody is eating with fork and spoon, I mean, my ritual breaks, and it arouses anxiety in me. So it also arouses fear in me, it also arouses the fact that I am not relating to my food. So the pattern is breaking. It's really very unique the way we traditionalize food. It's very unique the way we follow what our food is, the traditions attached to food. Very basic things like introduction of a thali. If a community is used to eating food in a thali where you have separate small bowls or insertions where food can be put, a gravy can be put, a dry thing can be put, rice can be put, a curd or a yogurt or a dessert or a bread, all those can be put separately. It really becomes a ritual. And the moment I'm asked to eat in a ceramic plate with everything together on the plate in once, it breaks the ritual. It breaks me away from my food or anybody having the food. And for example, eating with the left hand in India is probably in our country, it's considered to be a sin. If we make food at home, I remember my grandmother making food, and always we were waiting for food to come, but it was always presented on a thali and given as prasadam to a god first, And in that, there was a learning. I saw my grandmother never tasting the food. What she used to always do was take the steam on this part of the hand and just take the aroma of it, and she could tell whether the salt is less, salt is more, sugar is less, sugar is more, because the food is not supposed to be tasted. So that's an art people develop as a ritual. It becomes their habit, and suddenly, if that ritual is broken, that ritual is not followed, we feel uncomfortable. It's like when you're going out to do something good from the house for something new or a new venture or a job or an interview or an examination, the mother, the grandmother, the wife or the sister, probably it's mostly the woman, who will feed you with a spoonful of curd and sugar to begin your day, to give you that auspicious feeling in your the great work that you're going to do. That also is a food ritual. Seeing that many communities, because there is curd and sugar, and then there is thali, and then there is prasadam, everybody learns, everybody adapts, because it's not related to any particular religion, it's not related to any particular community or caste, it's just related to a belief. So I think that's really, really fantastic, and that's really something which is attached to food and has been coming through for generations. A very small thing like slurping of tea, you will find people who slurp their tea, make that little sound from the saucer. We feel it's odd, but I think there is science attached to it. Why? Because why wait for your tea to become cool in a cup? It's there. The moment the food comes to you, you're supposed to have it and pay respect to it. Even that is a ritual. So there are many such rituals which are attached to food. There are many such things that are attached to food that sometimes we don't realize, we don't give importance to. But yes, there has been traditions. There have been our forefathers and the generations before us who have made science or have brought science into food in terms of rituals, in terms of relating it to a belief. Only because education was not to its highest, the availability of content on internet was not there. It was only books, and even books and newspapers were a luxury for many people. So it was not able to flow through. But yes, through rituals, through adoption of rituals, through seeing each other and through passing it down, and maybe slight changes. Somebody will put jaggery with yogurt, somebody might put honey with yogurt, but yes, the belief and the ritual still remains the same. If some people add dates to the yogurt and give, so it's just the same. I've seen people outside India, in many countries where sugar eating is not so healthy, considered not so healthy, especially in the Gulf. They will take a date, put some yogurt inside the date, and give it to the person going outside the house for an examination or a job interview, or for a better prospect in life, or just as something which is becoming a daily habit. It's not only healthy, it's not only a ritual, but yes, it becomes a practice where we adopt or we adapt to various conditions, the terroir, the locations where we are staying in, to the periphery where things are available or not available. So instead of yogurt, you could have a labne or a Greek yogurt, but still the ritual is the same, the belief is the same, and the emotions attached to them are all the same. It's haldi, turmeric, for example, is such a big ritual in our country. It starts from birth and it goes up to end of life. In between, you get hurt, you get a glass full milk of turmeric. You're getting married, you get haldi. You're sick, you get haldi. you're happy, you take haldi. When you're doing your puja, you take haldi. So it's all related to food, and it's not only adoption and adaptation, but it is also a growth with generation that happens, and the traditions which are passed on with slight changes, with slight newer things coming up. We see many people, instead of diyas, we have electronic diyas today. Even those are traditions, but the feeling, the genuinity, I think is just the same, and that's the beauty about adoption and adaptation of rituals which are connected to food, that are so beautiful and so lovely. I think those were my basic insights about food, the adoption, and the adaptation. And I leave it to the rest of the panel to throw some more light on it.
Thank you so much, sir. This was such a rich interpretation of the topic, and you had such diverse examples. Thank you so much, sir.
Pleasure.
Mr. Swamy, we look forward to hearing from you your perspectives on the topic of today's discussion. So I open the floor to you, sir.
Hi everyone. So I have been doing a lot of food and a lot of food research ever since I began. And it was, as a youngster, when you're a young chef growing out, you want to keep on exploring things. And it was only when I started traveling into the interiors of India that I started noticing a lot of things. Uh, you know, Indian food by itself is has a lot of Ayurvedic principles to it. And as you travel in India, you're seeing a lot of color. You're seeing a lot of art, architecture, paintings everywhere you go. And when you see Indian food, by and large, it's very brown. It's very brown. It's very monotonous in its colors and textures at sometimes. And you also start looking and seeing as to what the fusion has come about over the past few centuries. Uh, because Indian cuisine has become a fusion ever since you can remember the time of the Buddha, which was about 600 BC. You've had the Chinese, the Arabs, the Mughals, the Portuguese have come in, the British have come in. And a lot of our traditions and cultures from the West also came from a lot of French ambassadors to the Maharajas and to the rulers. A lot of our cooking techniques, like the making of paneer or the making of bread, um, the art of pickling, a lot of these things have come by way of Silk Route, by the way of the Silk Route, by way of the sea routes. And a lot of these commodities that came into India were like spices, silk, cotton, you had cinnamon, you had cassia, you had mustard, fenugreek, even coriander came from Europe to India. So you wonder how did they all get uh, into Indian cuisine. Like we can't imagine Indian food without chilies or potatoes. But up to 600 years ago, they weren't even a part of the Indian cuisine repertoire. So a lot of cultures, a lot of rituals came up around food, came up around what we were eating, the changes in what we were eating. Like in South India, you have this broda bread, which the Dutch brought in. It's a very thick, dense, heavy bread. And it's very hard to get it down south nowadays. But yes, um, how did rice, the various cooking techniques of rice actually came in when during the Chola period, when Rajendra Chola conquered all the way to Indonesia, he brought a lot of the rice cooking techniques to India. So they even say that the preparation of making idlis actually comes from there. Um, we even have the notion that of biryani. Our chef was talking about a biryani earlier. The whole ritual around a biryani was that it was a cuisine that was built around war. The addition of rice to a biryani was a very Indian element to a biryani, because actually biryani just means roasted meat in Iran. And the addition of rice was when the Mughals were going to war. They wanted food which was cooked in one pot, easy to eat. The entire ritual of cooking it through the night and then having a good biryani in the morning before starting out on their long marches. You have a dish called cowsway, the whole ritual around cowsway. I know we Indians love cowsway, but it's actually a Burmese dish where the Gujaratis in Burma and the traders in Burma were all vegetarian, and how they adapted a very meat based dish because of their Indian customs, how they made it vegetarian. So we have a lot of rituals around food, and even your community meals, which are based around rituals. For example, your langar, or in Coorg, they have a lot of rituals around food. Uh, like Coorg, the food is very influenced by a lot of Greek rituals. A lot of the Greeks during the time of Alexander settled down in Coorg, in the region of Coorg, and like the introduction of meat, the introduction of pork to Indian food became very normal in that region. So, like we were talking about rituals, I think also every school should teach the history of food in the place where one is studying, where food tells us more about people than we can actually imagine. The beliefs, the traditions that we have. It tells you of your heritage and also one's identity. Uh, a lot of foreigners come to India, and I'm working with a lot of resorts in the interiors of India where we get a lot of inbound traffic coming from abroad. And rather than just giving them Punjabi food, which a lot of resorts do, give them the local food, give them the local grains, explain to them the rituals of the tribals. We serve a lot of tribal cuisine at these resorts, and they love learning about the ideology, the identity of the tribals, how they ate the local grains, how they ate with their hands, ate from either banana leaf or the ritual of eating from a thali, the ritual of one plate cooking or one pot cooking, like the Muslims have, where they eat from that thal, the big thal, especially during weddings. And um, so I think I'll leave it now to the next speaker to talk about rituals. So, hi, Unnati. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. This was a wonderfully engaging talk, and even I am someone who loves houseway, and you enlightened me today with its history. So thank you so much. Um, so we'll move on to the question and the answer segment, and in continuation of Michael sir's talk, I'll pose my first question to you, sir. May I?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
Yes. Okay. Yes, Michael sir. So we all know that food is a medium of cultural exchange. And do you think it unifies as well as divides people? And if so, how have you experienced this in your culinary journey?
It's a question for who, please?
It's a question for Michael, sir, but I think I think his connection is poor. Did we lose him? Maybe by the time his connection gets proper. Gautam, sir, may I put across a question for you?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So, how do you think that food practices during various ceremonies affect the intercultural adaptation and adoption of food consumption behavior?
I think festivals and ceremonies are the biggest show around in these ceremonies and festivals. It can be a marriage, it can be a a birthday, an anniversary, or any such celebration. It can even be somebody winning elections. When that becomes a ceremony nowadays. So yeah, food definitely becomes the center of attraction in these places, and especially in places like Michael was saying about langars and dharamshalas and big pandals where pujas happen, or where celebrations related to religion happen. It can even be in dargahs or outside the dargahs on Friday nights. It can be the gullies of Mahim in Mumbai, or Muhammad Ali Road on just before Eid, when the entire month of Ramadan is going on, or any corner of the world. It could be Christmas and pre-Christmas bash, after Christmas bash. It could be New Year. It could be Tej in Rajasthan. All these festivals, the center is definitely food. Culture is, of course, something. So all people from all communities come. They see, they learn. Even in South India, when you have in Kerala, when you have houseboat festivals, or you have seafood festivals, or anything that's related to food, people go there. They learn techniques of food. They learn new things about food. It could be as simple as somebody going from Kashmir to Kerala to Kochi and learning that food can be served on a banana leaf, and going to into more details, he or she can learn that after finishing your food, if you fold the banana leaf in a certain way, it shows that you appreciate the food. This not only happens in India, it happens in Southeast Asia as well, where food is served in bamboo leaves. And those bamboo leaves, once you open, you eat. The way you close it tells them, or you break it, tells the guy or the lady making the food how you appreciate the food, how did you like the food. It's like when we sit on an English table, or on a Vatican table, how we close our cutlery tells the server we finished our food, we liked our food. The angles which we keep the knife and fork or the spoon, it tells how much did you like the food. So it's all related to food. When we eat sadhyam in South India, we begin with salt, or we always have a little bit of salt on the same leaf has salt, has sweet, and we talk about umami today. Everything is there on that platter. We go to Rajasthan, I'll tell you about a tradition that's very popular in Rajasthan. So I went to a wedding when I was a kid. I was about 13, 14 years ago. 13, 14 years of age. And so it's a Rajput wedding. We sit down. We sit down to eat. That's also a tradition. There is science behind sitting on the floor and eating.
Yeah.
So you have a small chowki, four people sitting and eating. They have a huge thal, and then they come and then they put the rotis and on top of that, literally with a bucket, they'll come with lal mas, and they keep pouring lal mas on the roti. That's exactly what a meal is. So I was with three more people. And a little bit of food was left, and because we've been taught, being from army background, respecting food always. So I didn't leave anything. I just wiped off the plate. The the guy came again, put more rotis, put more mutton, ran mass, and went back. Then all of them again had little bit was again left. I again wiped it out. And when this was about to happen the third time, both of them caught my hand and said, "Don't finish. Leave a little bit on the plate, because it's a gesture to tell the people serving you food, because you are from the boys' side, the Bharati side, that yes, we've had enough of food. And similarly, if you go to West Bengal, I just had a Bengali wedding, and I was discussing with family members of the girls, and they wanted to put rasgulla on the menu, and they were very, very skeptical about the fact that these guys, especially from the boys' side, they pre-decide and come that today we are going to eat. Each one of us is going to eat 70, 80, 90, or 100 rasgullas and finish all the rasgullas, so that we can tomorrow talk that the girls' side could not provide enough rasgullas for the Baratis. So there are many such traditions, and it becomes like a trend. So a Bengali or a Maithili would be eating rasgulla, somebody would be eating ice cream, somebody, and it just grows like a tradition. And what happens is that when you adapt the traditions, when you adapt thalis, so somewhere in South India they might learn that serving the same food which was served on a banana leaf can also be served on a golden thali, can also be served on a silver thali, and vice versa. It can happen in Kashmir. We don't get banana leaves; they don't grow there. But yes, they can just call it from any part of the country and start serving. It becomes something new, and it becomes something very interesting. It becomes like a talking point. So yes, ceremonies, celebrations, all these kind of stuff, they bring in a lot of value to food, a lot of value to the point that how food is presented and how food today is perceived by everybody. Thousands of years ago, food was cooked on fire. Even today, food is cooked on fire. But yes, things attached to food keep changing, keep evolving. Trends attached to food keep changing and keep evolving. That's how life is.
Wow. Thank you, sir. That was a great answer. Thank you. Uh, Michael, sir, your connection was not proper when
Yeah,
I
yeah,
asked the
I'm back.
question. So should I repeat the question once?
Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, sure.
Yes. So we all know that food is a medium of cultural exchange. So do you think it unifies as well as divides people? So if so, how have you experienced this in your culinary journey?
I think food unifies people. It unifies people in many different levels. Like Chef was talking about at the time of langars, at weddings, it brings people together. But I think the introduction of certain rituals do divide people. I won't say divide people. It makes you not want to eat that food. Like for example, I was a young kid several decades ago, and we had gone for a South Indian wedding, and they started serving us out of buckets. And in my head, a bucket was something which you used to have a bath from, right? I refused to touch the food then, because in my head, why are they serving me out of buckets? And it took a lot of another trip when we went to Kashmir. Um, I saw them slaughtering chicken and lamb on the road, at the butchers on the road. And I swore not to eat meat for a long time after that. So I think certain rituals, I think, do tend to kind of make you not want to taste that cuisine or not want to eat that cuisine. Uh, it's like us also. We don't want to know where the chicken has come from. You know, on the plate is a piece of meat, but when it was a live bird, you'd probably not want to eat it. A lot of rituals are also created. I think when we see the ritual of another community, we either love it or we hate it. And I think that has also been ingrained in us from the way we have been brought up. Uh, Another example was like a friend of mine who's a very pure Muslim was traveling to Europe for the first time. There was nothing but pork sandwiches there on the train. He had no choice but to eat it. He was so hungry. So again, food can bring you together. It brings people together. You, when you're in a certain group, it's best not to, I would say not refuse it, but you can politely say, I cannot have it. A lot of people kind of say no in such an aggressive manner that it kind of offends the host also. You know? So then that host then kind of says, I don't want to invite this person or this person from a particular community over ever again. So it's the way that how do we balance ourselves out in public? How do we behave in public? I think that's very important. How we behave in public, especially around food, is very important.
Uh,
Hello? Yeah.
okay, Michael, sir, we just lost you in the
Can
last
you
few
hear me?
seconds, but I yes, I can. We can hear you, sir.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I was just saying that, it's how we should be able to hide our emotions, or we should be able to accept food for what it is when we are out in public. Uh, we should be able to, because food is a very living thing and it's life. I mean, again, I think my net's playing up. 1 minute.
I think the connections again got unstable for Michael, sir.
Hi.
Uh,
Can you hear me?
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It's restored, sir.
yeah. So I just was saying that, uh, instead of letting food divide us, because food is a very living thing. Food is living, and it's how we handle our emotions in public is very important for us to accept another person's food and actually enjoy food for what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So you ended it on a very lovely note. Thank you. It was a great answer. Uh, Kiran ma'am, my next question is for
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
So, how is food an agent of excising power and a potent symbol of expression of identity?
Oh, that's yeah. As Michael, if I may call you Michael, as Michael was saying,
Yes.
we to begin with, let me say that food is so intrinsically tied up with the culture. So, for instance, we have a lot of nicknames for people, and it's quite common across the world. For instance, in Europe, you have the Italians are called macarons. The Germans are called crottes because they eat sausages, and the English call the French the frogs, and South Asians are called curry. So offensive as they are, in a way, they are basically a way to mark differences between cultures. So, what often happens when the issue of power comes is, depending on who is powerful or who is not, these kind of expressions come into the surface a lot more. It's a way of denigrating someone, so on and so forth. So there is that aspect with ethnicity. But besides that, we have many instances where there is, for instance, gender division in how food is rationed at home. I discovered in parts of Eastern UP, we had a cook, or was it Marley, somebody who was working, and I remember he would never feed his daughter the fish head. Now the fish head is some sort of a delicacy in many communities, fish eating communities, and it's given the choice pieces are always given to either the head of the family or the male members. So if you look at data, in fact, just recently I was reading that meat eating in India is largely gendered, in the sense it's largely men who eat meat and not so much women. But of course, there are lots of regional variations within that, not so much in South India, not so much in East India, but definitely in large parts of North India, meat eating is normally the preserve of the men. So there is a certain element of power in that. There is also instances, and lot has been written on this. In fact, only recently I came across this article, and this has been widely reported by people like both Amartya Sen and his fellow economist John Drace. John Drace has worked a lot on nutrition, for instance. Particularly in India, there's a lot of malnutrition, and the midday meal scheme is basically to attend to this malnutrition. In fact, it is so bad. I think we are now uh, seventh or eighth from the bottom when it comes to malnutrition, which is quite alarming, because we are more or less self sufficient. And because of this malnutrition, they started this massive midday meal scheme. And what has been found is very interesting. I write this in my book as well. What has been found is very interesting. As much as it has made a certain amount of food available to children of a certain age group, it also showed certain, again, how do I say, age old disparities or notions that we have. So, in some of the midday meal schemes, if the cook is not Brahmin, the parents would put their foot down. They will not allow the children. No Dalit person should be cooking food. So there are India is full of these contradictions. As much as food unites, I agree. Food is a great unifier, but unfortunately, it's also been an expression of division, and you will find that on gender front, at the level of rich and poor, in the caste, in religion as well. So there are these issues that are there, and I won't go into too many details. But I mean, that's not peculiar to India. I think across wherever human beings are, and when they divide themselves into very strong ethnic groups, and because we have this notion that what you eat is what you are, in the sense you're a Brahmin because you eat certain kind of food, or that if you're a Brahmin, you eat certain food. And we also associate it with certain qualities. For instance, in Ayurveda, we talk about these gunas, the sattvic, tamasic, rajasic. These are things which we attribute to not only food, but those people who eat that food. So traditionally, for instance, the warrior clans or caste groups were encouraged or had been long associated with eating game meat, you know and the sattvic food was supposed to be pure, and it's supposed to give you pure thoughts and so on and so forth. One of my friend who is a chef, actually, she was cooking in Himachal, and she comes from California, and she lives part of the time in Himachal, off and on. And one day she told me a very interesting thing, that one of our neighbor, she was narrating an incident where she had a fight with someone. So this neighbor asked her, "Does he eat beef?" And she said, "Why?" He says, "Because he sounds like a bad man and he's aggressive. When you eat beef, you become aggressive." So she was asking me this: Is that true? Is that what you think in India? I said, "Well, I don't know what we think in India, but obviously, this seems to be a certain notion of what you eat is what you become." So these kind of notions also become the way in which we exercise power. You see, so yeah, it's there quite a lot. And we also have notions about how you should be pure or impure. So garlic and onions are not considered sattvic. In much of India, particularly in Bengal, um, uh, women, widowed women, were not allowed to eat certain kind of food, and that is because it's supposed to generate a certain kind of qualities, like I was mentioning, sattvic and whatever. So that tradition continued. Of course, now food habits are changing so drastically. Many of these restrictions which were imposed are giving away. But the statistics, only yesterday I was reading about the meat eating trend in India. The statistics seems to reveal that a good part of meat eating is still, for instance, with men. That also shows a certain amount of power play there. Notions which create these differences. So I'll stop here, and
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. You've answered very holistically. Thank you so much.
yeah.
Mehrishi, sir, can I pose my next question to you, please?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes. So, as you have traveled widely, you must have experienced culinary fusions that are rare. So, can you talk
Okay.
about some?
Well, there are many of these things, which are very rare and which come from old traditions and which go up to modern adaptation of a lot of stuff which was traditional. But yes, it has taken forms of modern trends. It has taken form of modern inculcation of techniques and stuff. Yeah, but if you go to old techniques, old traditions, a lot of experiments come from the region of Awadh. Uh, like the Dora kebab is one of the fusions. How do you cook it? How do you actually put it on skewer? Because it's so It's so very delicate. Even the galoti was a fusion in terms of not in terms of how the ingredient was mixed with something, but yes, a fusion in terms of how the look and feel of the kebab earlier was, and suddenly how it became, and serving it on ulte tawe ka paratha just to keep it nice. Today it might seem that it's a very old dish, but it definitely was a fusion. There is something in Awadh which I found was called as benami kheer. It's actually a kheer made with garlic. So when you call it as lesun ki kheer, it's not very appetizing. It's not. It doesn't sound really very exotic. But the moment you say benami kheer, it becomes so very. You become inquisitive about it. So it's not only a fusion about cooking a kheer or a dessert with garlic, but it's also about calling it, naming it. That brings in the fusion. That brings in probably the confusion also, what it was made of, and then also it brings in the challenge for the person making it, that the people eating it do not really realize in the end that yes, they are eating a kheer or a dessert made with garlic. Talking of garlic, there is this halwa made of adrak. Probably there was a Nawab in Rampur who was advised ginger for his ailing health. And yes, the fusion of ginger not only in tea or in some other form, but it came as a dessert. It came as a adrak ka halwa. I'm from Rajasthan, and suddenly, one day when I was traveling through interiors of Jodhpur, I found mirchi ka halwa. So it's also very unique. It's also very, because mirchi is grown in abundance there. You have so much of mirchi. Probably somebody didn't know what to do. How much of pickle can you make? How much of masala? How much of red chili powder can you make? Can you make something really interesting with green chili or red chili? Somebody, a halwai, took up the challenge, got it made into a halwa. Was very interesting. Suddenly became a trend. Everybody wants to eat a mirchi ka halwa. You go to Gujarat, they make it with the Bhavnagari chili. You come up to North India, some other parts, they make it with the capsicum. So that becomes a fusion in itself. One dish which is supposed to be sweet, but it's made with so many other things. Similarly, in Rampuri cuisine, when I was studying, I found halwa made of vegetables. So there is beetroot, there is pumpkin, all the sweet fruit vegetables and other vegetables which are actually sweet in texture. They become like a halwa, and it's really nice to find beetroot as a halwa. In international cuisine we might use beetroot as roasted beetroot, beetroot in wine, or carpaccio beetroot. The Italians might call it, or the French might call it. But yeah, it's very interesting. Suddenly there was a trend of making fried ice cream. In India thought, and made a fusion with an ice cream samosa. It was suddenly a viral thing, and everybody wanted to have a viral samosa, a small thing like a fire pan, which is available on Juhu Beach. People just see Instagram videos, reels of people. It becomes a
Yeah.
trend. It's a fusion in fun. They just want to go and feel it, the entire experience. Uh, then again, going back to tradition, there is gosht ka halwa made with mutton. Also very rare. It's also a fusion where nobody would ever think of putting an animal meat into a dessert. But yes, somebody made it, and I myself remember doing a Bengali wedding again, which was some years ago, and they wanted rasgulla in every form, in everywhere in the food. So I made a rasgulla ki biryani, you know colored the rasgulla with different flavors and spices and stuff. And yes, it was a rasgulla ki biryani because the entire wedding was vegetarian. So those are another fusion that I saw in Delhi nowadays happening in the last couple of years is tandoori momos. Who would have thought of momos coming out of tandoor, and yes, a fusion on chai where they give that tandoori koile ki kullad wali chai, where they heat up the kullad in charcoal, and then they'll pour the tea in that small little kullad, and then you get that smoky flavor. So it's all very interesting. People, what they can do with food, how they can play around with food. If you go to Mithibai College near in Juhu, and you'll find the dosa walas, and you can just see hundreds of varieties of dosas with all kinds of fillings. Every day they are up and about with a different filling. That's fusion. You have a Szechuan, you have noodle, you have fried rice inside the dosa. You have potato. For Jains, you have paneer, and I really don't know or even remember what kind of fillings they will use. They will even use a vada pav in a samosa. They will use other day I was seeing in a small marriage, pav and vadas being tossed together in a sauce. And so pav being cut, mini vadas being fried and tossed in a makhani sauce, in a Szechuan sauce, in a black bean sauce. That's also fusion. So it's really nice what people can think and do with food, and how they can present simple food into such fantastic ways. Those are simple fusion that I've seen and I remember, but there are so many I can continue for the whole night actually.
Thank you, sir. It was a very, very diverse answer again, very rich in examples. Thank you. Michael, sir, my second question is for you.
Yeah.
Yes. So, your book reads that an Indian kitchen is incomplete without the masala dabba. So, do you think that intercultural adaptation has revolutionized the Indian kitchen and the masala dabba?
Yes, in many ways. We call it the masala dabba, whereas you'll have a herb box in European cuisine. And that combination has always been on every shelf in every family, wherever you go around the world, in some form of the other. So we have the masala dabba, which is a unique wooden box. And I think it kind of defines us as a community because it sort of brings people together. Like even when you're visiting somebody's home, you want to know what are the spices they keep in their masala dabbas, the predominant spices, or where is the origin of that chili, which is also in that dabba. It kind of it creates a conversational story even for people when they visit each other's homes because like in Europe and America, you are invited to somebody's home. You just cannot drop in. Whereas in India, we are always dropping in into our neighbor's home, aunt's home. We are visiting our friends. We are a very hospitable community, we Indians. And that's one thing which is, we've all lived abroad at some point of the other. But when we come back home, it's really home because there's that friendship which is always in the kitchen. It's whether we are visiting, a friend's mom will sit and chat with us or the grandmother. And like I said, that spice dabba has become an integral part of the Indian story. And that's what I meant by those few lines in the book. Uh,
Wow, great answer, sir. Thank you.
welcome.
I think we have. I think ma'am has. Kiran ma'am has lost her
Yeah,
connection.
Yeah, I'm back.
she's
She'll
It
there.
join.
just lost the
She's here.
connection for a second.
No, no problem, ma'am. You're very, very well in time. I just was putting my question forth for you. So may I?
Yes, please.
Yes. So by blending the local and the global, many international food giants like the US's fast food restaurants, Subway, they have gripped the Indian market. So what are your views on this phenomenon?
Yeah, there's actually a book in a way which captures this. It's called Mcdonaldization. Uh, Basically, the corporations have been having this formula for a long time. It's not only to do with the food, which is basically how to increase their market size. So when you want to cater to a different regions, different ethnicities, you obviously want to cater to their taste. So McDonald's obviously will not use a typical burger which is served elsewhere, let's say, well, elsewhere I mean mostly in America, which is a beef patty, right? So they replace the beef patty with mutton or even a fish. And aloo tikki is very popular among the dishes. So that is the strategy that corporations employ for to expand their markets, and that applies to all companies related to food marketing. uh, but that is one part of it. But what is also happening is this new form of corporatization, which is basically, see, earlier when we said Coca Cola came from the US, it was, we associated Coca Cola with America, with production process, labeling, everything happening in the US. Now, what has happened is, and this is an aspect of globalization, which is the production itself has spread across the globe. I give this as an example to my students when I talk about globalization. For instance, this has not to do with food per se, but it's just a very small example. The What is that? Um, Barbie doll. The doll is made, or the making of the Barbie involves about 100 odd countries, you know because each country has its own version, or that you cater to, the Barbie dolls, which refer to a certain kind of skin tone or dressing, and so on and so forth. So they must be getting designers from that part of the world. They have people who uh, write the labeling in different parts of the world, and so on and so forth. So what I'm saying is that the production process itself has changed drastically in the last few years. It's also possible because we use a lot of telecommunication technologies. So you could be sitting here in India, but actually doing a design for a company which is based in America. So that is what is happening with Coke, for instance. You have outlets here in India. You don't really have to each time, get all your material, your design elements, all from abroad. So, and you'll find that in the food production processes also. For instance, when I was living in the US, I found that there were these ready-made parathas, which you won't find here so much. But these ready-made parathas were made, came in these packaged packets, and they were actually quite good. And they were made by this company, which since then has entered Indian market also, which is Pillsbury. So Pillsbury was making these parathas, and I'm sure the cover had these printing, and the printing read something somebody from India would have done. It says, just like the way your grandmother makes it, and all you need is a blob of white butter to finish the whole thing. And then I started to read a little more, and I found very interesting thing, that these things were made in actually some place in India, transported to in a certain form, transported and then done the finishing in America. So that is the level of globalization and localization. You can actually see the local and global coming together in a very interesting way. And in fact, many sociologists don't now think of globalization not just as practices emanating from one part of the globe and spreading to the rest, as much as how the whole globe is interconnected. They actually use the word localization, which is another way to capture how the global and the local come together. Yeah, I think I'll stop here.
Brilliant answer. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Captured the essence of the question and you've answered so nicely. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Uh, I would like to thank each one of you for being with us today and that you shared your valuable wisdom for our project. Uh, yes, Michael sir is back. Great. Yes, I would like to thank each one of you for being with us today and that you shared your valuable wisdom for our project. So, this is to state that we are seeking submissions in the form of stories, poems, and essays as a part of our project. So, to know more, please visit www.tellmeyourstory.biz and stay tuned for more academic discussions to be live streamed on our page. Wishing you all a good night. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and
Good
thanks
night.
to
Thank
each
you
of
so
my
much.
panelists.
Thank you